Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Before we chat with today's guest, here's a quick message from our sponsors. Do you need a career coach? I've been working with Microsoft Business Applications for over 18 years and have coached many people to fulfilling careers in the space. If this sounds like something that interests you, please go to nz365guy.com/coaching. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Seattle, the home of Microsoft. She works at Avanade as a business application solution architect. While growing up, she spent countless hours on the computer, tying up the phone line with her dial-up modem. She spends her free time building lots of PowerApps, experimenting with new capabilities and discovering new cool ways of developing Canvas apps from a non-programmer perspective. You can visit her blog, joyofpowerapps.com. Joy Kirkwood, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's so good to have you on because, I actually just checked on a recent blog post of yours and I see that someone said something to the effect, a comment on your post. It's good that opinionated pieces like this are published. And I thought, that's a cool way of saying it. Like, in other words, somebody that doesn't just go along with a party line, but when they see something, like the Emperor's naked, they call it out. And I feel you're doing that in some of your posts recently.
I love that compliment. Actually, I had a couple of MVPs reach out and give me compliments to that effect. And it just tells me I'm doing something right, that it's super validating, right? Like your opinions are important. And there's nothing more satisfying than having someone tell you that your opinion is important.
Yeah, exactly. So before we jump in there and get into the topic of interest, I always like my guests to be able to share where they're from, like, what's top of mind for them right now, like buying houses and things like that. And of course, what do you do for entertainment when you're not working? What are those great dishes and foods and restaurants you like to visit in Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, Seattle's a great place. It's such a foodie place, and we have so much great food here. I was actually just talking with someone sharing our favorite Seattle area restaurants, and here are my two plugging for anyone in the Seattle area. Mashiko Sushi in West Seattle, hands down, best sushi of all time. Go sit at the bar, get the omakase, just let them bring you whatever.
Wow.
And the other one, Purple Wine Cafe on 4th and Union, downtown Seattle. Their baked brie is to die for.
Wow.
So best food in Seattle when you come to visit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've been following my Instagram. I did just buy a house last month. It happened just so fast, and was able to stay in this amazing townhouse complex that I've been renting in for the past 2 years with all of my awesome neighbors. So that's taking up a lot of my time recently, becoming a homeowner, trying to do renovations. Now I have to fix all this stuff myself. It's been
so
pretty
cool.
exciting.
Yeah. Like, when you just mentioned the food, for years I've been traveling to Seattle, from my MVP and work I've done with Microsoft. And I used to always have this mentality. I just flew in, did my business or, worked and then left. And I wouldn't go and see the sites or anything like that. And then I toured, Europe for a while. And I was like, man, I've been missing out. And so last time I went to Seattle, I did 2 food tours. I did just a tour of the city. The walking food tours and it was just like, wow, you're so right. The food in Seattle is amazing.
We love our food. We love our microbrews. We love our weird neighborhoods. Every neighborhood's got its own kind of thing. And so it's like, if you don't like this neighborhood, go to a different one.
So cool. And of course, you've been selecting your paint colors and whatnot. I have seen that on Instagram as you're making your choices and remodeling already, right?
Oh, I love my new paint colors. I've never been able to paint before. It's just, the bane of a renter's existence are the white walls that they live in. And so the very first thing I did was just slap some very rich color up on the walls that I can now, I'm just really excited about it.
It's so cool. That's so cool. So tell us, how did you get into technology? What was that journey for you?
Yeah, well, you read a little bit from my bio on my website, which I put together. It's really so funny. But I was thinking about, how did I get here? How, get to be on a podcast talking about Microsoft BizApps technology. And it started, I just always gravitated towards technology. My dad bought, a family computer, and growing up, I just wanted to be on it all the time and taught myself how to navigate DOS and play my CD-ROM drive and games. And I toyed with technology a lot in high school. I had this compact Armada 7800. It was about 2 inches thick. It was a laptop that I bought. Just a terrible used thing, but oh my gosh, I was so proud of it. And I would, try to build my own website on it, and I was coding it in my own little HTML and very simple CSS, and all self-taught. Somebody gave me Red Hat, so I tried to install Linux once. Didn't go well.
Nice.
But there weren't a ton of STEM programs at that time, and I did not feel super strong in math, and so I just sort of avoided a technical degree. When I went to university, just didn't occur to me that that's something that I should or even could do, and I didn't pursue it. And it wasn't until after I had graduated and got some degrees and went into the working world and was the only person in the office that could fix the computers when people did, like, my computer's not working. Joy, can you look at it? And my first career technical job was when I started doing tech support for CRM 2011, just answering the phones and email tickets, and it kind of talked my way into the job. And no business being there. But that started both my career in technology and my career with Dynamics in CRM universe.
Wow. So you transitioned. How did you first come across Dynamics?
I knew someone who worked at this ISV, and I fixed their their kid sister's Windows PC in like 10 seconds. And they're like, you should come do this job. You'd be so good at tech support. And I'd never heard of Dynamics before that. But I got there and, love learning, and I love proving myself. So I, tried to learn it as fast as I could and become the top CSR, in the group as soon as I could. And, from there, I worked at that company for about 5 years, and I just had all these different jobs there. I moved from the tech support team to the onboarding team, and I learned Microsoft SQL, and started working on data migration scripts with ETL tools. I did that for a year, and then people discovered that I could talk and speak really well. So then I got involved in doing, national presentations to our user base and doing trainings and, things like that. So then that was really the basis of my career with CRM. And when it came to my current company, to Avanade, I came as a business analyst and started doing, delivery here, and have, kind of been there ever since.
Wow. So what version did you come in on Dynamics?
2011.
2011. So, I've been having, and I hope to do a podcast soon with Joel Lindstrom, which is a discovery he's observed, and it's something that I can confirm, is that there's a lot of folks that came from Dynamics, and the Power Platforms now come to the fore, and we have Canvas apps, but it seems, and because you don't fall into this category, which I want to highlight it and what you think the problem is here, but it seems that a lot of folks that were brought up on Dynamics CRM and what we're to call model-driven nowadays feel that they can just pick up Canvas tomorrow if they needed to, but haven't bothered to. They haven't explored Canvas in detail. They haven't, worked out the use cases. So therefore, they're limiting their repertoire as consultants, as implementers of this technology, to just a model-driven world. You've obviously branched well beyond that, because the subject we're going to discuss today is Canvas apps in offline mode. And how did you, what motivated you to go beyond just your model-driven, experience into this wonderful world of Canvas apps?
That's such a good question, and I feel like I'm such a poster child for this. I had heard of PowerApps, and no one calls them Canvas apps until you learn that PowerApps is 3 different things, and you can't just call Canvas apps PowerApps. And I had heard of it, and I was intimidated by it. I feared it. I hated it. I did not want to learn something new, and I felt very threatened by it. This thing's coming for my job, and I'd better, defend my territory. And I did not get into Canvas apps until October of 2019. Didn't even touch them. My first sort of Power Apps journey actually, I would say, started in 2018 because I was working on an XRM model-driven project with a D365 portal.
Yep.
So it was CRM, but it really wasn't. It was really a Power App model-driven and portal project. But before we were really calling it that. And so it was really that once I learned Canvas apps and I started looking at the platform in a different way, brand new eyes, and sort of pivoting my thinking like 90 degrees, I really saw what Microsoft was trying to do with the platform, that, Dynamics is Power Apps, Power Apps is Dynamics, but for these operational verticals, for sales, for service, their first party apps. And that pivot really helped me feel more comfortable in this space. Mm-hmm. But I got to say, I was doing app in a day. I was doing it with my client. We were going through the labs together. It happened to be Halloween, and we were both dressed like witches.
Nice. Yeah.
Great memory. Mm-hmm. And my mind was just blown. That simple device ordering Canvas app, and that's in the app in a day lab. It's really, really simple, but it does a great job of showing you all of the possibilities. Just a little bit, just enough for you to get your mind around it. And as soon as I did that and I realized the power of the connectors, at the time there were something like 250, now there's more than 425. Which is just crazy, mind-blowing. Right?
Yeah.
The fact you can embed it in a model-driven app, the fact that you can make these pixel-perfect things where you're just in charge of the experience. Oh my gosh, how exciting is that? A non-technical person, I can build Power Apps, I can build mobile apps now. So that was really how I kind of got around it. And I think if anyone out there is still feeling that fear or that hesitation, just go do the app in a day. Just go see for yourself, figure it out what it is, stop fearing the unknown, and get on the wagon, because it's train's about to leave the station.
Yeah, so true, so true. It's interesting you talk about 425 connectors now. I just see this week connector.gallery, a new site being opened up, which is designed specifically for people to create connectors for the Power Platform, just similar to the PCF.gallery, which of course was, where people could share their PCF controls. So, the whole connectors and PCF, et cetera, has created an explosion in this world. And, what I'm looking forward to is more effort also spent on the UI, moving away from just what you get out of the box and really creating attractive apps that people would love to use. What's your experience now? So that was 2019, did you say, that you started, getting onto it? So tell us what you've been doing since 2019 from a app development perspective.
Well, throughout 2020, it was a really interesting year to be doing anything, really. I started really paying attention to trainings and summits and user group activities that were happening and opening my eyes and learning. But the best experiences that I had was to really just try and go do it myself. I always share, if anyone's interested to see what a Power Apps Canvas app journey can look like, my worst little app that I started in like February because I was just playing around. I have this used book habit addiction. I have like more than 300 physical books in my house, which is going to be really fun when I move.
Yeah, but it's paradise. That sounds to me like bliss. That's amazing.
Well, the problem is that when I go to a used bookstore, I'm forever buying books that I already own because I haven't read it yet. And so it's just hard to keep track of it all. So I've wanted to have an app that I can scan the barcode of a book and have it tell me if I already own it.
Wow.
Or if it's on my wish list, just all of that type of thing. And so I thought, I went to the point, I'm not even kidding you, Mark, I was trying to learn Xamarin. I had downloaded Visual Studio 10 or whatnot. And I was like, am I going to have to learn C# and Xamarin to make this thing happen? And then Power Apps. So I made this, I call it Bookshelf, and it was just the ugliest, most terrible little thing, half broken. But I learned about collections because I wanted to be able to scan a barcode, take that ISBN 10 code, and hit up some kind of a connector. So I created a Power Automate flow with an HTTP call that connects to the Google Books API.
Nice. I was going to ask, do you Google Books. Okay. I thought you might have used something from Amazon.
Well, Google Books was free and had documentation when I was looking for it, but it was just playing around with it. And
that's cool.
The way that API returns a set of data is really complex. It's multiple, like collections of collections of collections. And so to be able to, I want to show the image, the icon. Of the book, I had to learn the collections, and it was really just stubbornness and persistence that I just kept working at the problem until I really understood how to do it. Writing the gallery label so that it would show up correctly. First of this dot that. That really bent my brain a little bit, But afterwards, I came out of it knowing how to do collections and understanding them at a really deep level, and that process of I'm just so stubborn. There's got to be a way to do this, and I'm going to hammer my brain at the problem until I sort it out. Happened iteratively with every Canvas app that I took on. I learned something new. I encountered weird problems and figured out how to solve them. And that was building apps for my own personal life, building apps for my team, and later building apps for my clients.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And of course, the reason we're here chatting today is Chris Huntingford. I was having a chat with him, and he was like, man, you've got to talk to Joy because you've written a post where, was it April 14th, an honest guide to Canvas apps offline. I like that, an honest guide. And of course, that was part one. Part two's been followed up in June the 2nd. Tell us about those posts.
Yeah. Well, they actually started because someone who works at Avanade connected Chris and I on this topic. Chris had joined Avanade recently, and the topic of offline had come up. And our global Power Platform lead said, "Oh, I think Joy's done something with offline. You should talk to her." And that's when I met Chris Huntingford for the first time, and learned how dangerous it is for him and I to be in the same room together.
I think it's anybody and Chris in the same room.
We really feed off each other's energy. He's great, and I've really enjoyed having him join the company and be able to, like I said, get on these calls together that are for work and just, they're so fun. We're getting work done, I promise, but they're just such the highlight of my day.
So good.
But he wanted to talk about it. And I said, I was asking him all these questions about his use case. And I said, oh, no, you can't do that. That's you're going to hate that. And was giving him all of these things. And he was just very, very, very grateful. And I followed it up with an email, a really big detailed email. And that's really what the core of those posts, became. I'd already started the blog. And so I had that email write up and talked to a few folks that have additional experience with offline around Avanade, got some additional input. And that's really what became the two blog posts, part one and part two.
Nice. And what's the reaction? What's the feedback you've got from people that are now read them? Has anyone at Microsoft reached out to you on any of it?
The feedback's been very positive. A lot of folks have been very appreciative of my opinionated coverage, which is great. You wake up and you have a LinkedIn message from Scott Duro in your inbox thanking you for your coverage and asking for more. That's pretty exciting for a nobody like me who's just like, hi, I'm over here. Just been a business analyst in CRM for 8 years. So no one from Microsoft has reached out, but we've also been talking to the product group about what their offline roadmap looks like. And I've given a lot of this feedback to them directly. And I can't say anything specific, but the roadmap's super exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. Super and exciting in one sentence. That stuff is coming because, it's been one of these areas that for years is kind of, there was offline caching type feature for a while. There's not, it's never been kind of a hero feature, yet there's a lot of organizations that have a desire for it. Back in the day, I was involved in an app we used the Outlook offline connector, which came with a light version of SQL to do stuff, across Western Australia, which had, for roading networks, it had no cellular coverage whatsoever. So we had to do all offline while the workers were out on the road, and then they'd come back and sync it in. What are the use cases you're coming across for offline at the moment?
I think that any organization that has a user base that is or could be mobile are going to encounter this one way or another. Australia and US both have the same kinds of issues where there's huge, vast areas where there's no cell towers and, you're not going to get any coverage, but there may be work that needs to get done. And you're going to find that in some pretty unusual places. Any type of field sales rep or service technician, for granted that they go out on the road. But there's, especially with what happened last year and how our economy and the world and technology is responding to it, we're seeing a lot of disruption in typical industry verticals. So think about car insurance, for example. There's lots of car insurance companies out there that have a service offering that they'll send an insurance adjuster to your location, right, to document after an accident, the damage on your vehicle, take photos, et cetera. So now you have what used to be an office worker, a knowledge worker, now has all the same problems as a service technician and a field sales rep where they need to be mobile. And anytime you add in a mobile scenario, you run the risk of needing an offline. There's so many places where there's just really bad Wi-Fi, bad cell service. And we're, even considering situations where locations where internet access is turned off because of security reasons, like a secure warehouse. There's lots of different ones out there, and any type of mobile app is going to require offline at least to be considered. Yeah.
So true. So tell me about the limitations you've come across so far.
Well, first big caveat, subject to change. Watch this space.
Of course. But as of today, what are the limitations you've come across that you've not been able to necessarily create a production-ready workaround for?
Well, there are workarounds, but the three big limitations that you're going to come across if you want to do offline in Canvas apps. Number one, if you want to take any data offline, it must be in a collection first. You're not able to take data directly from an API call into your save data, load data expressions. And so that introduces delegation problems, where right now, two of my very favorite PowerApps expressions, collect and clear collect, do not support delegation for any data source. So that immediately says, okay, well, if I can't get all of my data to take my data offline, then offline is not a valid scenario. Now, there are ways around that, mostly using Power Automate and arrays to do your heavy lifting, but it's certainly something to think about.
Yeah. Any other limitations?
Oh, there's two more. The second one is how the data is currently being stored. So the data does not access your device storage. It accesses app memory. And the best estimates that we have on how much data you'll have available for your app to store the data is 50 to 70 megabytes, just not very much.
So is that an imposed limit of the container in iOS and Android, or something else?
It is. It's something that's driven by the device itself, the capabilities, like how much memory your device even has, but also by how the operating system is allocating app memory to the various apps on your device. So there's no real good way to track how much you have available, how much you have left after you've saved some. Yeah. And it's going to vary based on device type. So you have a user who brings a consumer device that's several models too old, it's several, operating system versions back. All of a sudden, they have a poor user experience because you didn't test on that version. Totally.
And there's no checks that you can put in place that says you need to upgrade, as in the not necessarily the hardware, but the app version. The container version, the PowerApp container.
There's really it's a black box. You're not going to really be able to know about it. I'm sure that you can do some app insights, writing back to know what your users are actually using. But other than just saying, some of our users use really old devices. If you can trace the actual user who logged in, then you could go and talk to them and try to get them a device. So it's just a matter of if that's the user base that you have, you might want to think about issuing devices to them so that you have a consistent set of devices that you can test against.
Yeah. So not best with BYOD. So do you think it's Microsoft has not provided the telemetry at this point, or do you think it's they don't have access because it's coming from the operating system that they're working on?
I'm going to guess that it's the latter, that the PowerApps Mobile just does not have access to control the app memory. But I would also hazard a guess that the long-term roadmap for how offline is going to go does not end with better app memory, but ends with
totally.
we use the device storage. So my guess is we won't see any additional features there.
Okay, so there's a third one.
There is a third one, and that's on synchronizing the data back to your data source, to Dataverse or wherever it's going. So there's not an inbuilt synchronization, so you do have to build it yourself. So you have to monitor when is the device offline and when is it not. And once it's back online, then how are you synchronizing it? And for certain situations, this can be really challenging. So think about a scenario where you're just downloading a random set of data when you go offline, and any user who's also on mobile or maybe back in the office could have the same set of data, and
Correct.
It's possible that any of you could have edited that data. So now if you both edited the data, the Canvas app maker now needs to decide whose changes are saved and what, now you have to make a lot of decisions. Who's going to be saved, and who do you overwrite, and what do you do with the data that gets overwritten, and how do you notify the users, and what a headache that is to try to build in a Canvas app.
But here's the thing, right? That was all built 10 years ago, 15 years ago in what we had in Dynamics CRM back then. That functionality was there with the offline connector. So I feel like the logic is recognizable. And I think from memory, the model work there was the last person to create the edit overwrote anybody below. And that was at a field level. Or is it a column level nowadays? That was carried out. So the logic is there, but you're saying that functionality is not available out of the box. Each individual app builder, app maker has to actually build their synchronization logic.
Yes, rebuilding that wheel, reinventing it time and time again. So that is a really large limitation that there is no workaround for. You must write that. Otherwise, you'll always be overriding any changes that may be made by other users back in the office.
So two big asks we have of Microsoft. Number one, create the synchronization for everybody, and maybe make it partially configurable to some degree, whatever you can. But then the second one is, of course, local storage, which means you're probably the first to announce that the Dataverse Lite version, for installation on mobile devices is coming. Oh, no, you didn't say that, did you?
Well, I did not say that, but I if I had to guess, that that's where they have to go. The app memory is not, it's just not a solution, nor can it be.
No, it's like a caching type function, right? It's not never going to handle large quantities of data.
Exactly. So, Microsoft actually did release a preview feature that stores images that you take offline, and it does store it in device storage. I think that's a hint to where the roadmap's going.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, I can only assume that they don't have enough use case or enough customers demanding it that we haven't seen it, because honestly, this type of stuff's been roadmapped for at least the last 3 years. And it's good that your post came to light to highlight, somebody that dived, well deep into the tech. Are you anything from how have you addressed workarounds in the apps you've built so far then when it's come to offline? What are the alternatives?
The alternatives, so I would not try to build offline for a very large use case that is not really, really focused on a single task, or maybe one or two tasks. If you're going to do offline in Canvas today, your app needs to do one or maybe two things and do it very well offline. And so the one use case, that I went through that produced all of these insights was for a company that was needing an inventory counting app in these gigantic warehouses where there's so much metal in their product that it interferes with like cell service. So, even hotspots wouldn't effectively solve that problem. But everyone got their own data. All of the users who were about to go out and do the inventory count had a set of inventory pre-assigned to them. So I didn't have to worry about synchronization because they had everything they needed and no one else would touch it while they were out on the floor. And that was a real time-boxed effort that was happening. So that scenario, that use case really led itself to say, offline will work for this. If it were more complicated than that, if there were more data that we needed, if there were more tasks that they wanted, I might not have built the solution the way that we built it. We might have looked at alternatives. Alternatives would be looking at other PowerApps mobile, like the model-driven, which does have a bit more robust capabilities. Like you were saying, they already solved synchronization, and that app does have it. It's a bit as I understand, it's a bit of a heavy lift to get the table set up, but once you've done it, it works. And of course, as we're talking about offline, we're talking about usually a lot of service technicians. Whenever field service comes up, you should be looking at D365 field service and not necessarily trying to build that in a Canvas app.
Yeah. And of course, that uses Resco, which is a proper offline mobile application.
Right. There's Resco and there's also the new field service app. And that is being so industry focused, they know that offline is needed. And that's really what's driving the roadmap. Yeah.
Awesome. Tell us about good design in Canvas apps. It's a pet hobby of mine at the moment. I've put a few tweets out on Twitter saying, is anyone going to create apps that are so good when it comes to the user interface that I wouldn't be able to tell it was a Canvas app. I would be like, what's this built on? Like, it's dare I say it, it's as good as some of the iPhone apps that I'm seeing out there that are just so slick. They're so well thought out. Now, we might never get there, though. Those are custom built apps, but, more than just the 3-screen out of the box kind of, apps that you get, like apps that are really the user experience and I think even strong empathy with the person that has to work with this app day in and day out. That the empathy is so strong that it creates great app design because you're thinking of the cognitive strain you're going to place on those individuals for the months, years to come that your app is in production.
Yeah. No, I absolutely, I resonate with that. I will say, first off, it is possible. It is possible to make beautiful Canvas apps. And I know because I've made some.
I love it.
How do you address a good design in Canvas apps? I think you actually nailed it. Canvas apps are apps, and we've had apps for a good long while. And so even though you are building for your coworkers or your clients, you are competing with everybody's consumer experience with apps that are built by these massive tech companies, Microsoft and Apple and Google and Facebook and people that have been perfecting app building for a decade or more. So you're probably not going to achieve that as a citizen developer, and you probably don't have the budget for that as a pro developer. But you do need a design that is intuitive. As you said, it needs to be an empathy with the end user. And it does need to be attractive because you want to encourage that user adoption. It doesn't need to be super fancy, but form and function are important drivers to get people to actually use your apps.
Yeah. So how do you do it?
What do you do?
What do you do? Yeah. How do you solve it?
Yeah. If I'm solving it for a client, this is what I do. So for my clients, I always involve designers. I love working with designers. And Avanade actually has a full service design studio. And I'm an adopted studio kid because I get on with them very, very well. And, collaborating with a designer on a Canvas app and a portal, by the way, is such a really fantastic experience. And it's the way that you level up from the 3-screen start from data. It looks like a Canvas app to something that can trick you into believing that it's not a Canvas app, that it's something custom built. So for small apps, I'm always bringing a visual designer. A visual designer has the skills to, bring in modern app patterns, buttons, colors, fonts, sizing, and build wireframes for you to copy. So if you're not someone who's super design savvy, then you just copy the wireframe.
Yeah. Great.
For a bigger app, something that's going to be more enterprise scaled or has more, functionality, I'm also bringing in a user experience lead. A UX designer can usually do a lot of the visual design stuff, but they're really focused on user experience and that human-centered design. What do the users need? How many clicks does it take to get to the end of it? What are their most important business processes, the things that they do 80% of the time? Let's prioritize those. And they can help with layouts, navigational flow, and data presentation even. And if I can find myself a cross-functional designer that does visual and UX, I'm bringing them to every project.
Yeah. Have you found any?
Yes, we have some, and they are
awesome. Can you flip me their LinkedIn details so I can hire them?
No, I won't do that.
This is awesome. Any limitations that you've come across with working with designers that you feel the raw materials, the Power Platform, there are limitations. Do you, is there any kind of limitations that you feel that you've come across that you're hoping will be addressed in future?
If you ask a designer, yes, they will tell you that there are limitations. But
so what have you heard from designers?
They want it to behave like HTML, right? Like a custom, Xamarin type app, and
of course,
sort of the freedom of just doing whatever they want, and then having somebody go code that for them. So there are boundaries. There are some bumpers up that you have to play in that space, and that's where the partnership and the collaboration is so important, to have side by side the designer and the Power App maker, the developer, talking through the wireframes and discussing those design considerations and pointing out, actually, I don't think we can accomplish that, and then having that instant feedback loop to get to a design that is both form and function, human-centered, but also possible.
Yeah, I like it. Joy, this has been great talking to you. I always is there anything you want to add before I jump to your quickfire questions?
No, I think that covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, man, this is great.
One thing maybe I will add is not everyone has designers or the access to them. So, for those of you that are really curious about how to make better Canvas apps, it really is a process of empathy and introspection. You are a user of apps. And
totally.
So, go do research on what apps do you like to use and what are the patterns that make sense, and try to emulate those sort of common patterns. For me, I'm always, if I'm not working with a designer, I'm just drawing. I'm a very visual, spatial type of person. So I'm on a whiteboard or a virtual whiteboard, and I'm sketching out, the menus and the flow from screen to screen and using that as my guide. But definitely have that empathy, like you said, Mark, for your user, and talk with them and recognize that the user experience is just as important as the functionality that you're coding behind the scenes.
So good. Joy of PowerApps.com is where you can read Joy's posts. They are amazing. It's well worth going up there, checking that out. Quality stuff. Joy, is anyone you recommend to come on the show in future that you've not, you haven't heard of them in the public domain before, but they've got some really good insights? They might be a guru in a particular area of business applications that you think would be worth talking to?
The first person who comes to mind is my colleague Venkat Rao. Venkat he works with Chris and I. He's the North America Power Platform lead. But one of my absolute favorite things about Venkat is if you follow him on LinkedIn, he is always posting about accessibility technology. And that's something I'm actually quite passionate about. I'm really interested in making sure that technology is accessible. And he's always posting about assistive technology and making videos of things that he's explored and doing collabs with people. And he also works with Power Apps. So he would be an amazing guest to talk about accessibility and Power Platform.
I love it. Can you hook us up? That would be awesome.
I will do.
Thank you. Okay, quick fire question time for you.
Oh, no.
Not too bad. Who was the most influential person on you growing up?
Oh, most influential people growing up. I would probably say my parents had a lot of influence. My mother is a chemical engineer and my father has a PhD in material science. So came from a really sciencey background that really prioritized, education. So that really did have a pretty strong influence on, you go to college and you get the degree.
It's good. It's good. I like it. What is something you think everyone should do at least once in their lives?
Do the thing that scares you the most. That was the best piece of advice I got when I took my current role in pre-sales here at Avanade. And she said, do the role that scares you the most. And so, when you're faced with that decision and you are about to back out because it scares you, do it anyway. And just, jump.
I love it. Final one, who's the worst boss you've ever had and why? You don't have to give their name. You can just give some context.
Goodness. I really don't want to answer that.
The good thing is exactly that person's face is in front of you right now, right?
Let me generalize it. I don't like working for bosses who don't want you to shine. The best type of boss to have are the kind that are constantly putting your name forward and watching you grow and cheering you on and never getting in your way of no matter where that will take you. The worst boss to have is the one that wants you to be in the cubicle in the corner, just put your head down and do your work and not ever fly.
Joy, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I've had a really great time.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 guy. I hope you really enjoyed that podcast. I certainly did. If there's somebody you'd love to see come on the show, hit me up via LinkedIn, message me there, and let's see if we can fit them in. Otherwise, if you'd love to leave a review, go to podcast.nz365guy.com and leave a review. I'd love it. Get your feedback. That'd be fantastic. Stay safe out there and see you next time.